Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It is 2:04 in the afternoon. I hope everyone is doing well. Thank you for coming to this session. We're going to get started. My name is Pablo Avila. I am from the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I have my colleague Oscar Cortez from the center as well, who will be helping me monitor the chat. Welcome, everyone. This is a 1 hour training session on Zoom level 2. I will show you the agenda, what we will go over in a moment, but momentarily, please feel free to access the link, the resource document, excuse me, the resource document that you see on the screen. In putting together these sessions, we realized that there's plenty of resources we wanted to share with you. So we went ahead and created a single document where we post everything. Um, all the attendees will be muted and there will be a time to ask a few questions towards the end. My colleague Oscar is going to be monitoring the chat, and I encourage you to let's go ahead and get this started by state your name and your department so that we can get started. And you can put this on the chat and then continue to use the chat so that you can ask questions. My colleague Oscar will be letting me know from time to time so that I can address all of your questions as we move along. This session is being recorded and it will be shared later with you and with everyone in the college. We're going to put it on the CTL's YouTube channel, and we will make it available so that whether someone registered and couldn't attend or if someone did not register at all, everyone will be able to access this recording. So there's additional sessions that are happening the same level 1 and level 2. I'm going to talk about level 1 in just a moment that are happening next week on Thursday and Friday. So there is a chance to still sign up for another session if you want to. This session in particular, level 2, is going to cover the setting up of the excuse me, the setting up of your personal meeting ID in Zoom. We will also talk about how to use Zoom for office hours, if that is an option that you are considering. We're going to talk about breakout groups, something that faculty have been asking a lot about. We're going to take a look at the overall polling features on Zoom. And finally, we will share some tips and recommendations. This is level 2, but level 1 covers the following. If you're looking more in-depth account settings, basic settings on your Zoom account, or if you're looking to understand how to schedule a meeting, a recurring meeting, including how to share those links, I recommend that you sign up for level 2 as well, because I will cover all of that. If you're also looking for sharing recorded sessions with students, level 1 covers that as well. And like I said, there's an additional 2 sessions that are happening next week on Thursday and Friday. It seems that all of these workshop sessions on Zoom have generated a lot of attendance, so the center will certainly continue to consider adding additional sessions on additional items as well, so that we can provide all the support to faculty during this semester. All of this information, it's on the resource link. And how do you access the resource link? By going into your browser and typing in the URL that you see on the screen right at the bottom. It's bit.ly/lag Zoom res for resources. If you access that, minus the point, there's no period at the end. If you access that, you will get into the resource document that's publicly available. You can share this with that document with whomever you want. And also, there's a link to these slides right here, the ones that you're seeing on that document. I'm going to show that in just a moment, okay? What we're going to be doing today, this is going to be a demo session of what I mentioned a moment ago. We're going to talk about the personal meeting ID, using Zoom for office hours, breakout rooms, and polling features. Attendees you are all encouraged to follow along, but for any reason, if it is too quick or if you want to just pay attention to what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to do that. This recording will be available later so that you can revisit and specific segments so that you can revisit that in your own time, okay? A couple of quick points. These are recurring questions that we have been getting from faculty via email and in conversations with many of them over the last few weeks since the semester started. You access your Cuny account on the URL that you see right there. We're going to get there in just a moment. It's cuny.zoom.us. And you're going to log in with your Cuny credentials. Okay, that is the first name, that's the last name, and the 2 digits of your, those are the last 2 digits of your Ample ID. I'm going to show that in just a moment when I get to the login page. The Zoom website has a lot of quick how-to videos that are very helpful, and the link is right there in case you need to revisit a specific feature on it. Their website covers a lot, so I will show that on the website as well later so that you can see. There have been plenty of questions about cloud storage. In Zoom, you have the ability to record to the cloud and locally. And IT has stated that the cloud storage is limited to faculty and staff, and they recommend that each user limit their usage to 1 gigabyte. This is cloud storage, all right? It's important to note that. As you can see in the next point, a local recording is recommended over cloud recording. And what that is essentially is Zoom generates a file on your computer that you can then move to the cloud and share with your students. How do you do that? You can do that via Dropbox. The level 1 workshop covers a little bit about that. Cuny provides Dropbox to faculty and staff, 1 TB of storage, and it's plenty of storage for you to share multiple videos with your students. This will solve the problem of maxing out your storage in your own Blackboard course if that is the issue that you're running into. There's also an email address that the IT division has set up. It's the zoomhelp@lagcc.cuny.edu. If you have a specific issues accessing your account, it does not work, or there's something that is suspicious or anything that you are having trouble with, we, the center, are happy to help you and provide you with training. However, if there's more of a technical issue, IT will certainly provide that support. You can write to them at that email address. Here's the first thing that we're going to go over, and I just want to show you this, and then I will take you straight to the website. So we're going to take a look at the personal meeting room. And the personal meeting room in Zoom, it's always reserved for you, and you can always access it with a unique meeting ID, probably by now, and a meeting ID and your personal link. Probably by now you have become familiar with meeting IDs and passcodes in Zoom. The meeting IDs will always change when you are scheduling meetings, if that is how you are doing it. But every user has a specific personal meeting room, and that ID never changes. And it is always recommended to use this when you have some type of impromptu meeting with a colleague, and you don't necessarily need to schedule that in your calendar. You can meet with them over Zoom and give them that meeting ID. I'm going to show you what that looks like in the Zoom website in a moment. And that is almost the sequence of a phone number. So if you remember that number, you can simply give the other person your meeting ID, and he or she will be able to join you right there without necessarily scheduling a meeting. So we're going to take a look at the personal meeting ID. We're going to take a look at the personal link, and we're going to take a look at the settings of your personal meetings. Yes, Oscar.
Is the Cuny Zoom account linked to my personal Zoom account?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So the question was, is the Cuny Zoom account linked to my personal Zoom account?
Oh, thank you. No, the answer is no. Your personal account is your personal account, and it does not link with the Cuny account. The Cuny account, it stands on its own. You access it via the Cuny website, how we're going to look at it in just a moment, and it does not merge in any way or form with a pre-existing basic or pro account. Those are very different ones. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Let me go. First of all, if
and can you share your screen, Pablo? There you go.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and post this link on the chat once again. If you're looking at the chat, you should be able to see the link to this document right here. This is the resource document. I want to quickly show you this. These are the Zoom training sessions that the center is offering. And I want to draw your attention to this part. Right here, you will be able to access the slides that I am showing you during this presentation. All right. And if you scroll down just a little bit, these are resources that I recommend that you look at them either during the session or after the session. This document is public and you can share this with other colleagues if you want. And this will offer additional resources for you to look at in terms of using Zoom. Like I said, let's move ahead and logging. The first item of business is logging into Cuny. The URL is cuny.zoom.us. You're going to land on a page like this. You simply type on your address bar. You're welcome to follow along if you want, or if not, you can simply pay attention to what I'm doing and the recording will be available to you later. Once you go into this page, all you have to do is click on sign in. And then you will be prompted to log in with your Cuny login credentials. In this case, I'm already logged in into my account. That's what Zoom recognized that I am returning. But you simply will have to log in with your Cuny credentials, which is your first name, that last name, and the last two digits of your Ample ID. And the password will be the Cuny first password. If you cannot log in or you're not sure how to log in the resource document, there's a link number 7 that talks about the login instructions for faculty and staff and students. So this is what I'm referring to. The username, it's the first name, last name, and two number digits. And you log in via this website as I demonstrated. You hit on sign in, and then you will be prompted with this login screen right here. Okay, all of this, it's on the resource document. Once you log in here, you can tell that you are on your Cuny account if you log into this page. Let me make this a little bigger. If you log into this page and click on your picture on the right-hand side, you are able to tell you're a licensed user and you are using your Cuny login credentials, your Cuny email address. In some cases, users have reported that even when they do that, Zoom takes them to their personal account, whether it's a basic or a pro account. If that is the case, you can simply sign out and then go ahead. If you go into the Zoom website, and I have also seen other faculty use this website, this is the generic Zoom website. You simply can click on login and sign in, and then a lot of faculty enter their email address right here. And this is what doesn't work. What you would have to do in this particular case is go into the signing with SSO. And what this means is you're basically telling Zoom, I have an institutional license, let me in. So you simply type in here cuny.zoom.us, which is the URL that I mentioned. It will hit continue, and it will take you to the login page. So this is the login page that I was talking about a moment ago. And then here, all you have to do is simply put in your username and password. As you can see right here, my first name, this is not my Outlook, this is my Cuny login credentials. I'm gonna go ahead and click on login, and it will take me right in. Some users have experienced even done this and then they still land on their personal accounts. If that is the case, I would recommend clearing your cookies from your browser and start all over again. I think,
Quick
Oscar, you have
question,
a question?
Pablo. Yes. So Cuny Zoom account is available to students as well, or no?
That is correct. The license for Zoom, it's available for faculty, staff, and students. As long as they have an affiliation with any Cuny institution, they will be able to log in with, from what we know from IT, it's the same login credentials for everyone, because Cuny students will also have a Cuny first account. So yeah. So from here, more than likely what you're going to see is on your profile, this is on the web browser, okay? And this happened in a couple of sessions ago. Some faculty were seeing the dimensions of their browser a little different. So if you see your browser that displays all of the options like this, all you would have to do is simply click on the arrow and then see the rest of the options. So the first thing that you probably will see will be your profile. And then here is how you're going to see, here is where you're going to see your personal meeting ID on your link. If I display this, you may notice that this has a LaGuardia office number. And so that I can remember my own meeting ID, I simply switched it to my own office number. And every time that I want to meet someone from LaGuardia or from Cuny, I simply give them my personal meeting ID and then I meet with them. Like I said, it's recommended to use your personal meeting ID when you meet either impromptu with a colleague or when you meet with people that you regularly meet with. When it comes to scheduling classes, it's best that you schedule classes on a recurrent basis with a different meeting ID, and that is what level 1 covers. If you have not yet signed up for that, then I encourage you to do that. If I hit on the edit and I am on the website and I click, I can tell that this is my Cuny account because I click on my picture and I see this. I'm gonna go ahead and click on profile if I'm not there already, and then this is the page where I am editing all of this. So if I click on edit, I will be able to change my meeting ID. Remember that the meeting ID has the sequence of a phone number. So you can leave it the way that it was defaulted to you, or you can also have the option to change that. And as you can see, it says right here, use personal meeting for instant meetings. What happens is when you enter your client, and I will show you this in a moment, you can initiate an instant meeting without having to set it up and schedule it. And you can start that with your personal meeting ID and you can invite anyone. As long as anyone has that meeting ID, they will be able to enter. In the same way, in the same fashion, you can also do the same with your personal link. The personal link, it's almost like your direct access to your room, as to your personal room space. As you can see, I simply put my first name and last name so that I can easily remember this. And if I am meeting with someone on an ongoing basis, or I need to check in with someone impromptu, I can simply either give them my meeting ID or I give them my link, and then we agree on the time, and then I will be able to have that Zoom meeting there. So you can customize this as well. I believe the default will be a series of letters and numbers, but you have the option to customize this as well. Now, after the profile settings of those two things, personal meeting ID and the link, I'm going to jump to the meetings section, okay? A lot of people get confused between what is the difference between a regular meeting and my personal meeting room. There really is no difference other than the fact that your personal meeting room is always accessible. It's always, people can access it with a specific meeting ID, okay? If they know that meeting ID, then they simply will be able to access it. But as we will see in a moment, I will recommend using the waiting room feature. So right now I am on meetings, and if I click on meetings, I will see all of this. These are all of the meetings that I have. You can see this red button right here because that's this meeting that's currently in progress. I want to go straight into my personal room right here because I want to revisit the settings for that. So for the personal room, I'm going to see the settings right here, and at the bottom, I'm going to be able to hit the edit button. I'm going to go ahead and click on the edit button because I want to show you a couple of things, okay? First of all, the personal meeting ID, it's right here. And again, this is not going to change. The personal meeting ID will always remain the same unless you change it, obviously. I always recommend the passcode. In my case, I personally don't have it for this, but given the extra layer of security that faculty want to add, I think it's a good option to go ahead and check off. And I also recommend the use of the waiting room. And the reason why I recommend the waiting room is because if anybody has access to if anybody knows your meeting ID and they come into your room, you always want to make sure that you know ahead of time who's trying to get into your room. So if you have the waiting room enabled, what's going to happen is you're going to see that someone almost knocking on the door, and Zoom is going to tell you Oscar is trying to access your meeting space. And then you have the option to let that person in, or you have the option to even sending a message and then say, I will be with you in just a moment. But that way, the waiting room will restrict everyone from entering your meeting space directly. So I always recommend having that. especially if you're going to use this for office hours, as we will get into in just a moment. It's always helpful to have students come in, and then you can know who is at the door, and then you can let them into your space. The video settings right here, they basically mean that the host will have the video turned off when you enter the meeting. But it doesn't mean that you're going to remain with the video off. You can always start the meeting with the video off, but you can always manually turn it on, okay? And the same for the participants. You can start with the meeting with the video off, but they will always have the option to turn their camera on if they wish to, okay? The audio, I always recommend using both, because we never know how students or other colleagues are going to be entering our meeting space. In some cases, if you choose telephone, that means that whoever comes into your room will absolutely only have to be able to join from a telephone. The same if you choose computer, only the person will only be able to join from a computer. But if you hit both, then the person will be able to use either device, and it's more inclusive of other people's devices as well if you keep it on both, okay? Now, so far, and like I said a moment ago, a lot of people think and they question what is the difference between a regular meeting and my personal meeting room. There really is no difference. And all of these options demonstrate that these are the same options that you will choose when you schedule a regular meeting. All right. The only difference is that your personal meeting room will always be accessible with your unique personal meeting ID. Okay. And then these options right here, I always recommend to leave them to just check the mute the participants upon entry, because that is what normally when they enter, sometimes users are not familiar with the Zoom environment and they don't know how to mute themselves. So you simply mute them by default. It does not mean that you will have the user muted throughout the whole time. The user will be able to unmute himself or herself upon entering. It's only the default entry into the meeting room, okay? So you can choose to do that. Some people have asked about the authenticated users, only authenticated users can join. This means that if you check this, that means that the user has to be logged in to an account with Zoom, whether it's basic, personal, or a Cuny account. But you're essentially forcing the user, whoever is joining your meeting, to sign in first before joining this meeting. As you know, anybody can join the meeting with the URL and the meeting ID. And obviously upon entry, Zoom will ask them to can ask them to rename themselves. But if you check this option, Zoom will force every user to have to log in and sign into their accounts before joining the meeting. I normally do not use this, but that is how it is used. So it's obviously up to you how you use this, okay? I'm simply go ahead and click save right here. And these are now the settings on my on my personal meeting room. Again, they're not gonna change normally. The only difference between this and a regular meeting is that I will have a dedicated meeting ID, and I always can share that with anyone whom I want to join me in my meeting room, and I give them the meeting ID. And if they go into the Zoom website or on the client, as I will show in a moment, they can always go to the option join a meeting. And when they click on the Zoom website, join a meeting, Zoom is going to ask them, okay, you want to join a meeting? Give me a meeting ID or a personal meeting link.
So, Pablo, two questions.
Yeah.
So if a student enters into the waiting room using their phone number, is there a way to message the student to authenticate their identity before letting them in? That's one question. The second one is, what does it mean to request permission to unmute participants?
Let me tackle the first question. And for that, let me go back to let me just reshare. Okay, I wanted to show this. If you go into the waiting room, if you are in a meeting and the waiting room is enabled, when someone tries to get into your room, you will get a notification. and then you will see the person who's trying to get into your room. In this case, the example was Oscar, but he was authenticated to the extent that he had a first name and the last name. You can send them a message, but I believe this is a one-way message, meaning you can send them a message and telling them, can you sign in again, but using your first name and last name, or at least your first name. But I don't think the user can respond to my message. So I think that is how it is. I will certainly follow up and get the right answer, but you can message the person, either telling them, I'll be with you in 5 minutes, I'll be with you shortly, or if the person does not have a first name and last name, it's only a sequence of numbers, you can tell the person, can you join again, but using your first name and last name. And obviously these buttons are self-explanatory. You can either remove the person if you don't know them at all, or you can simply admit them. In this case, when I knew it was Oscar, I would simply admit them. So that is what and the person in the meeting, meaning myself, I can see myself here, and I know that I am in the meeting and this person is waiting for me. The other question, do you mind repeating the question again, Oscar? Because I wasn't too sure how to answer that.
So there's another one that just came in as well. So the question was, what does it mean request permission to unmute participants? And the other question is, can you link your meetings to Outlook and Google or any other email calendar?
So the option, I'm trying to remember where the option for request participants to unmute themselves. I think what that means is that the person, it's basically choosing whether they want to mute themselves or not. I always allow the users to unmute themselves if they want to. I believe there's another control where you can.
It wasn't editing the personal room.
Editing the personal room. Okay. I'm going to go into it so that I can see what you see. Personal room, and then edit. Request permissions to unmute participants. So basically what this means is if you have 3 people in the room and you want to ask someone something and you want to unmute them, if you check this option, what that person is going to see is it's going to see a pop-up window that says, hey, Pablo, the host wants to unmute you. Do you want to allow that or not? I can click OK, meaning, okay, host, you can unmute me, or I can hit cancel, meaning host, I'm sorry, but I don't want to be unmuted. That's what that means. Any other questions?
Can you link your meetings to Outlook or any other email calendar?
Yes, you can. And if you go into, there isn't an easy way for doing this. I had to contact IT. I can certainly, if you want to do it, you can send me an email separately and I can show you the instructions. But yeah, you essentially go into your profile and then you scroll down and you will be able to sync your calendars right here in this area. And then you will see the button that says configure. And when you hit on configure, if you want to configure your Google or your Office 365, which are separate from what LaGuardia offers, you can do that. But if you are looking to add your Outlook account, the regular Outlook that LaGuardia offers, that's going to be Exchange. And then there's a couple of settings that are a little difficult to navigate that I had to contact IT. If anybody wants to do that and you send me an email, I can send the instructions for doing that. In my case, as you can see, I already have my calendar synced. So when I go into my meetings, I can see all of the meetings that I see on my own calendar. So not only the ones that I schedule on Zoom, but the ones that I see on my calendar as well. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the breakout groups and the polling. And before we do that, we're going to take a look at the settings, because a common issue that faculty encounter is they host a meeting, they are looking for either the polling or the breakout room, and they do not see it. And normally the reason why they do not see it is because probably it wasn't enabled on their settings. How do they do that? We already are on the place where we need to be. Instead of meetings, I'm going to navigate to settings. And on settings, there's plenty of, there's many options here. And I encourage you to visit this at a later point. Level 1 covers many more options, but the only two that I'm going to look for here are breakout rooms and polling. Oscar, I think you have a question?
No questions.
Okay, so I'm just doing Control F on my keyboard so that I can navigate to the breakout room, but this will be under in meeting basic. I'm sorry, in meeting advanced right here. And this is the room, the breakout room option that I'm looking for. This means that it's on. And then if I turn it to the left, it means that I'm turning it off. So all you have to do is navigate to your settings in your account, look for the breakout room, and make sure that it's on. And then once you do that, the next time that you open a meeting, you will be able to see the breakout room. And I'm going to show what that looks like in just a moment. The same thing with polling. I'm just going to navigate to polling doing Control F or Command F on Mac. And the same thing with polling. If you want to use this feature and you want to use it, make sure that you go to your settings and make sure that this is enabled. Okay. If you have already hosted a meeting and you have seen both buttons, the breakout room and the polling on the bottom, as I will show in a moment, you do not have to do this. But if you do not see it, it's because probably you have to enable this on your settings. Okay. So now that we have done this, I'm going to jump and I'm going to show my entire desktop so that I can show you what this looks like. And Oscar, you should be able to see my entire desktop, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you probably see many of you. I'm only doing and sharing all of this for the purposes of the activity. And one of the things, I wanted to show a couple of different things here. First of all, the chat feature. If I just click on it and I unclick, it will give me this pop-up window that I have to move around if I want to. I always recommend, and I'm working on a 13-inch Mac here, and for the purpose of maximizing my space here, I always recommend merging this to the meeting window. So I go navigate to these three buttons right here on the chat, and then I click on merge to meeting window. What that will do is it will shift my chat on the right side. This is incredibly helpful if you're constantly chatting with your students or you're asking them questions and you want to see their responses as you see the rest of you. Another thing that I want to do, and I'm going to close this momentarily, another thing that I want to do is show you the different kinds of view that you have on Zoom. Right now you see multiple people in the window. That's because I'm on the gallery view. But if I go into the speaker view, I'm only going to see one person, in my case, my colleague, Oscar. It's always helpful to have the gallery view because I personally believe it's the closest that you can get to looking at your entire room in the classroom face to face, right? When you're able to read the room. Obviously, if your students choose to turn their cameras on, then you will be able to see them all. But in case they do not, then at least you are able to see how many people you have in the room. Right now, it's only 17 of us, so I'm able to see everyone in the same room. But in the event that you were to have more people, then you will see another page count here so that you can jump to page number 2 and so forth so that you can see the rest of them. I am working on a 13-inch Mac computer here, so I only have so much real estate in front of me. If you were to have a bigger screen, let's say a 30-something inch or a 40-something inch screen, then you will be able to see many more video thumbnails. Zoom allows you to have up to 49 video thumbnails in the screen when you are in gallery view. Another feature that Zoom released not so long ago, a couple of days ago, it's the ability to move people, move video thumbnails and reorganize them in front of you. So let's say that I want to put my colleague Oscar right on here, and then I want to put myself in here. And then let's say that I want my colleague Vanessa Bing, who's going to present, let's say that I want her to present something and I want to make sure that I remember, I can place her video thumbnail right here so that I can make sure that I have a visual representation of how my class works. You are able to do this with the latest, hello Vanessa, thank you. This is a feature that you are able to do, you're able to get access to with the latest release that Zoom made, which is version 5.3. I'm going to show you how to run an update on your client a little later in this session. If you are not able to do this right now, it's probably because you do not have that version yet. Okay, so now let's get into the meat of our session, which is the breakout groups and the polling. But before that, I want to ask Oscar if there are any questions.
Yeah, so there's a few questions that just came in.
Yeah,
So when I add a poll for one class section, can I copy it to another class section if they are both already established?
that's a good question. I believe the answer is no, but I will double check when I show you how to do that in a moment. And so just remind me when I go and create a poll, just remind me to look for that option. I believe it is not possible, but I will correct myself if I need to.
Second question, can participants rearrange the video thumbnails or just the host?
The participants can also rearrange their video thumbnails as long as they have version 5.3. In addition to the rearranging, and this is something that we haven't spoken about before, but there is also an addition to a pin. The pin is what the participant is able to pin for himself or herself. This is very helpful if a participant needs a sign language interpreter. So if I need a sign language interpreter and my colleague Oscar is interpreting for me, I can pin his video so that I can make sure that I always see his video thumbnail even when he's not speaking, but he is signing. This is incredibly helpful, especially when you have a student and a sign language interpreter. The pinning is for the viewer only, in this case, whether it's the host or the student, to pin a particular video to be in a speaker view all the time. And students are also able to rearrange the videos in the way that I just did, as long as they have version 5.3.
And one more question. Well, it's 3 in 1, all related to the chat function.
Mm-hmm.
So can you quickly show us how to disable the chat feature? So minimizing it, so it doesn't interfere with what's going on in the presentation.
Yeah. And one more thing that I wanted to share is if I rearrange, let's say that I want my students to start presenting, and I know my colleague Oscar is going to go first, and then let's say my colleague Mary will go next, and then Vanessa, and then my colleague Adiambo. In order for me to display this same order to the students, I can go in here and I can choose follow host's video order. So that means that my own order of video thumbnails will be replicated into the students as well. So the students can reorder their own videos in any way that they want, but they can also be given the order that I, as a host, have in front of me. This is all with version 5.3. But to the question, if I hit on the option, the chat, let me pop it out and close this. I believe by default, if you hit on the chat button, you're just gonna have this pop-up window that you can move around. You can go in here and then you can choose the option merge to meeting window. And then you can simply go ahead and click on it and it will merge it and it will constantly display that in here. If you have the participants tab, it will also do the same. If I pop this out, if I want to have like my participants tab and I want to move it around, I would have to move it around if I need to, but I can always click on merge to meeting window and that will move it into here. That will give me a better distribution of my content within the 13-inch screen that I am working with. Okay. One more thing that I can, go ahead, Oscar.
And the other one is, can participants merge their chat? I'm guessing.
And by merge, if by merge you mean do what I just did, the answer is yes. They can navigate the chat and merge it to their right side or have a pop-up window if they want to. These features are available to every user in the call, not only for the host. Now, while I am here on the participants view, I also wanted to mention a couple of important things. One of them is if I go into any participants, and I'm showing you all of this for the purposes of this training, I, as the host, will be able to see under more a couple of important options. One of them, I can make anyone a co-host. In my case, my colleague Oscar already is a co-host, so the option is withdraw that co-host permission. But I can always make anyone else a co-host and give them the same rights that I will have. I can also hit on the option rename. And this is important because many faculty have asked, what if my student is joining from a phone or it's joining from a device that has someone else's name? The students are able to rename themselves if you want them to. You look at the settings in your account. If you allow them to rename themselves, they can do that. But you yourself as the host can also do that. So you navigate to the participants, you go into the more icon, and then you choose the option rename. And if my colleague Oscar did not put his full name, I can go ahead and type the correct first and last name and then hit on rename. So that is important for hosts to know, and this is incredibly important, especially if you're looking to do this for attendance purposes. Oscar, please remind me to look at the usage on the accounts settings because I want to show people that in terms of
Okay.
attendance. So now I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to show you the breakout room because that's what we wanted to get into. As you can see, I can see the breakout rooms right now. And I can see the breakout room because I enabled that in my settings. Remember that a moment ago I took you to the settings page. If you turn that on, you're going to be able to see the breakout rooms. You probably are not going to see the breakout rooms right now because you're if you don't have it enabled. All right, but I'm going to go ahead and see this. And here I want to mention one thing. In the latest release that Zoom pushed out a couple of days ago, um, they released this last option, which is really cool. I'm looking forward to testing that. It's the let participants choose a room. So you can essentially create different rooms, and then you will give them as options to the students, and the students will choose which one they want to join. I want to be on team A. I want to be on team B. I want to be on team C, and they are able to jump back and forth from room to room. I look forward to testing this. They only released this a couple of days ago, and in order for you to see that, every user in the call has to be on version 5.3. That is the only drawback for now. You have to upgrade, and I'm going to show you how to do that when we look at the client. But for now, I'm going to go over the first two options. One of them is assign automatically, and what this means is I want Zoom to randomly distribute my 25 people in my class into 5 groups. Let's say that I want 5 groups, and you can notice that if I go up on the number of breakout rooms, Zoom, it's telling me how many participants I will have per room. I only want 5 groups, so Zoom, it's telling me with the number of people in this call, I'm gonna have 3 participants in a room. I'm not gonna create the rooms, but I do want to show you how this looks like, okay? And what this essentially means is I am going to see how Zoom randomly assigned everyone in this meeting into the 5 groups that I created. I'm just gonna pull this up so that I can see my full room information. And then I can do a number of different things here. I don't want this to be called room 1. I want this to be called group A. So I can go ahead and click on rename, simply putting a new name and then type enter. And then I want this to be group B. You get the idea. You can rename this to whatever you want. This number right here means this is the number of people assigned currently. Let me go ahead and pull up group A just so that I can demonstrate this further. I have 3 colleagues right here in this group right now, and I have 2 options, move to and exchange. What do they mean? Let's go one at a time. If I click on move to, in my case is this colleague right here, I can move my colleague to another room if I want. So let's say room 5 for now. So I have moved my student from one group to the next. That's what the move to means. If I exchange, what Zoom is going to tell me is, okay, you want to exchange that person with whom? So let's say that my case is my colleague Nancy. I can go ahead and swap Nancy, let's say, with Erica. So what it means is I'm simply swapping them, one to the other group and the other one comes to this room. So I can play around with all of these settings, and all of this is happening in the background. No one is in the breakout rooms. No one has started yet. I'm only setting this up. You can set this up very quickly if you allow Zoom to randomly assign. And then at the very end, you can go ahead and click the open all rooms. And I'm not going to click on that, but that's basically going to send people to their breakout rooms. Now, before I do that, before I continue, I want to show you the settings because the settings is important to look at. As you take a look right here, before you launch the breakout rooms, there's this following settings. The first one is the allow participants to choose room. This is the update, the release that I mentioned a moment ago. If you go into your meeting and you don't see this, probably because you haven't updated. I'm going to show you how to in a moment. The second option is allow participants to return to the main session at any time. And what this means is if you open the breakout groups and you send them to their respective groups, if you choose this option, that means that any student will be able to return to the main room at any time, okay? They can just say, you know what, I don't like this group, let me return to the main room. They will be able to do that. But if you do not choose this option, then that means that the student will remain there until you bring them back, okay? Essentially, the student has to stay there no matter what.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Thank you. I've been trying this over and over and over again. And what happens is once I set it all up, whatever, and the students show up, they don't go into my room. They go automatically into the breakout rooms. And I don't want to start class with stuffing them into a breakout room. I want to start class with the introduction to what it is that we're doing. So, how do I
Yeah.
get around that?
It's difficult to assess what the issue may be without more information. When you start a meeting, by default, the breakout rooms are not started. Unless you purposely go into the breakout rooms, you have the breakout rooms, and then you click on open all rooms. If that is the case, then obviously everyone will jump into their breakout rooms. Without that, no student will be able to get into the meeting and straight into the breakout room. So every meeting will always start on the main room. I'm happy to follow up with you on a site and then assess. Perhaps there is something. I would ask if you can send me an email so that way we can set up a time and figure that out. But every session will start in the same fashion that this one started. And unless you, one, open breakout groups, and two, let Zoom randomly assigned, and three, open all rooms, the student will not be able to bypass that directly. But I can certainly follow up with you on a site. All right?
So I should be able to set up my rooms beforehand
Correct.
and do all that stuff and then open all the rooms
Correct.
during
At the time that you
20
want.
minutes 20 minutes into my session.
Correct. You open the breakout room at the time that you want. There's no option for the breakout rooms to automatically open up the moment someone joins.
Okay.
Yeah.
And am I able to join their groups? In other
Yes.
words, to participate? Okay,
Yes.
that
Yes.
I need to know how to do.
Yes, yes. And if you're able to, and what's going to happen is once you open all of the rooms, you're going to see all of the rooms that are currently opened, and then you're going to be able to see the option join. When you click on join, then you will be able to join that particular group and then return to the main room and then join another group and so forth. So you will be able to do that for sure. Okay. I want to go back to
Pablo, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How do you find the breakout rooms in the bottom? What do you click on for breakout rooms?
Sure. So when you enter your meeting space, it should be all the way at the bottom. If you do not see, that's what I mentioned a moment ago, you might want to check the settings on your account as I shared a moment ago so that you can make sure that the breakout room is enabled. Most of the times when faculty join their meetings and they don't see their breakout groups, they suddenly think that their account is not certified or something. It's all a matter of checking the settings on your account and making sure that that feature is on.
But I don't see it here on your website. Where is it on your website?
You do not see it right now because you are in My Room space, and perhaps you do not have the breakout room enabled in your account. So that's what I said a moment ago. You can go into the settings page and you can check that the breakout room is enabled, it's turned on. Then once you start your own meeting, a meeting that you yourself have scheduled and you start, then you should be able to see the breakout room. If I join Oscar's meeting later on and he has not turn on the breakout room, I will not see that. Okay.
So it should be on the bottom with all the other
options. Correct. It should be at the bottom as you can see right here. Okay. So
Okay, thank you.
absolutely. Back to the settings of the breakout room. I was in the automatically move all assigned participants. I always recommend turning this on because what this will do is this will take the participant directly into the breakout room without doing anything. Okay. If you turn this on, the moment that you hit open all rooms, you will be able to send the participants automatically. If you do not turn this on, what's going to happen is the participant will get a pop-up window that says the host is inviting you to breakout group 1, and then the participant has to manually click OK. And if the participant hits cancel, he or she will not join the group. So I always recommend turning this on to make it easy for both the hosts to ensure that everyone gets to their rooms and the students because they don't have to click on anything. Okay. The next option is the auto close breakout room after a certain time. So when someone raised a question about turning the breakout rooms automatically, there's no option for doing that. But there is an option to end and close the breakout rooms after a certain time. So if you give your students an activity for, let's say, 10 minutes, you can always choose this, and then you can say, I want my students to be there only 10 minutes, and then you can even choose this, notify me when the time is up. After 10 minutes, Zoom will automatically send all of the students back to the main room without you losing track of the time. So if this is something that aligns with your activity, you can absolutely take advantage of this, okay? And finally, the countdown after closing the breakout groups. This is important because the moment that I open all the rooms, the breakout rooms, this button will turn into the close because obviously I want to bring them back. After I hit that, you have the option to give students either up to 1 minute, 60 seconds, or 120 seconds, or you can even give them 10 seconds. And what that means is if I am on the breakout room and the host is bringing me back to the main room, if I have 10 seconds, I'm going to have a countdown, and it says the host will send you back to the main room in 10, 9, 8, 7, and so forth. I'm sure that you have been in other meetings where you were in a breakout group, you were discussing something, and then all of a sudden, boom, you were taken back to the main room all of a sudden, and you said, oh, I was speaking about this. Well, you can give your participants, your students, a specific time the moment that you hit close breakout rooms. You can give them up to 120 seconds if you want. I normally give them a 60-second warning so that they know in 1 minute they have to all return. And if they do not, immediately after the 1 minute passes, they will simply be returned automatically. So all of these settings are important to check when you are starting your breakout room. And after that, if you are comfortable with your rooms, you simply click on open all rooms. I want to show you next the
Yes.
recreate, because this will take me back to the original options. I first let Zoom automatically and randomly assign my participants, but now I want to check the option assign manually. What does that mean? Well, essentially, it left my same rooms and I have them all, but the difference is that there's no one on any of those rooms. Why? Because I chose the option to add people manually. So what I'm going to see though is the assign button. And in this case, Zoom is going to tell me, okay, Pablo, you want 5 rooms. Here's all the people in your list. Who do you want to include in room A? Let's say that I want my colleagues, Adriana, Erica, and Leah to be in room number 1. I'm gonna move to room number 2, and now I want my colleagues Oscar, Rashida, and Tom to be on room number 2. You get the idea. If you have 30, 35 students, this will obviously become a little tedious, but that is just how it works. If you have 10, 15 students, this obviously becomes manageable. This is another option that you can also play around with Zoom. The rest of the settings that I've shown are the same. You can go into the settings and you choose all of this. You simply click on open all rooms, and then the rooms will open up, and then you close them at a time when you want. Questions?
Yes. Is there any way to, let's say, have Zoom do it for you randomly as we first did it, and then the next time you come around to reassign those same people together?
That's a good question. I
I
don't.
mean, I have a huge class. Okay,
So,
it's like 45 people.
so for example, if you want Zoom to assign people randomly, but you want Zoom to keep those same groups throughout the session, I don't think that it's possible because every time that you come back,
Yes.
unless you don't move the setting. So for instance, if I go ahead and recreate, I'm going to assign automatically. I'm going to recreate. Let's say that I want all of these people. Okay, if I open the rooms right now, I'm going to open the rooms, and then all of these people are going to go into their breakout groups. When I close them, when I close the breakout rooms and bring everybody back, this is not going to disappear. This is not going to disappear. So it will revert back to this view, and then I can reopen the breakout rooms using the same list. So within the session, that's not going to change unless you purposely hit on recreate and then you go assign manually. So as long as you, and then if you close this window right here, and then suddenly you think, oh, I closed the document, I didn't save anything. That's not the case, because you can go into the breakout groups, tap again, and you will see the same list. Now, this is going to be saved for the duration of your meeting. So if you want to have these same groups on a weekly basis, then you're not going to be able to do that. But within the same session, you assign them first randomly, and then Zoom will keep that same list of names unless you purposely change it to manual. So I think the answer is yes, as long as you use it within the same session. Any other questions?
Okay.
Any other questions? Oscar?
Nope, there's no more questions. You actually answered the recreate question already.
Okay, so polling. Polling, it's another feature that that it's highly interactive in Zoom. It's helpful. Um, and again, this works in the same manner as in breakout rooms. If you do not see it in your own meeting, when you start a meeting that you yourself have scheduled and you don't see the polling, it's probably because you haven't turned on that particular feature. So you might want to go into the settings on your account, as we did at the beginning of the session, and make sure that you turn that on. But now in this case, I can see it right here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. Now, I actually created a poll already, and as you can see, you are able to see my screen. And all I have to do now, I've created this question, and I'm going to show you how to add additional questions. But first, I'm going to go ahead, and because I see the question that I've created, Zoom, it's telling me this is the one question you've created. What do you want to do? Do you want to launch it? So I want to go ahead and click on launch poll. And if I click on launch poll, you should now be able to see the question. And if you're able to see the question on your screen, go ahead and answer. Let me go ahead and stop this. So if you're able to see the answers, the question in your screen, go ahead and take a moment to answer that. So I'm going to share this and share this. I'm going to share my screen once again. And as you can see, the host view, this is not something that everyone will see. I'm showing this for the purposes of the training. My host rights will allow me to see this polling in front of me, and it's telling me that it's in progress. I've only launched this for like about a minute, and these are the number of people that I have who have voted, 11 out of 13. So I'm going to go ahead and hit end poll. And then if I want, now no one else is able to see the results. I always can share the results with participants. So let me go ahead and stop this. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit share results. And you should be able to see the results of that poll in your screen. Using the poll, it's very helpful when you want to assess your class understanding about a specific topic. I don't recommend using the poll for, let's say, a quiz, because it's a little tedious to get into the reports, and also the creation of the questions is a little tricky, as I will show you right now. Let me go ahead and close this. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop once again. So Oscar, you see my whole screen, right?
Yes, we're seeing it.
Okay. So I'm bringing you back to my in-meeting settings so that I can demonstrate what the polling, how the polling works. I'm going to go ahead and click on polls. This is the same window that I saw before, with the exception that I now see some answers. But now I want to hit edit. And when I hit an edit, here's what's going to happen. If I want to add a question now, let me go ahead and hit see. You're able to see my screen, right, Oscar? I'm creating a poll right now.
We see it. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we see it.
So every time that you want to add a question, the only tricky part is that you always have to go to the Zoom website. So you saw that I clicked on edit, and then now it's taking me to the website, my account on Zoom. So I'm just going to go ahead and just give this a name. Just going to put poll test number 2. I can choose the options here, whether I want my poll to be answered anonymously or not. So if I choose anonymous, that means that all of the answers, I'm not going to know who answered what. I'm not going to be able to tell that. But if I don't choose this, every user with their respective name I'll be able to see what the answer was for each user. So I will be able to say Oscar responded this. It is a little tricky because if you have a user who did not rename himself or herself and remained named as iPhone, let's say, Zoom is going to show you user iPhone answered this response. So that's what I don't recommend using this for quizzes, because it's not as intuitive as I wish it could be. And then I'm going to go ahead and type in my question. What planet do we live in? And then here is the tricky part, because the only type of question that this feature will allow me to create will be this type of question. And I can either allow the user who's going to respond to choose a single choice, or I can give the user the option to respond with a multiple choice. And I can enter as many answers as I want. And I have as many as this, right? I can either choose this single option or multiple choice. If I want to add a question, I'm going to add a question, and as you can see, it's exactly the same type of question. So if you are looking to use this for an open-ended question type of thing, for instance, describe one word or tell me one word to describe your week, something like that, you're not going to be able to create that type of question using the poll feature. So on the one hand, it's helpful because you're able to assess your students' understanding on a topic. On the other hand, it's a little limited because, as you can see, you only have one type of questions that you can create. Let me go ahead and hit save. Oh, let me go ahead and delete this and then hit save. But now, here's the other thing, questions.
Yes, question, Pablo. So the users know that their names are attached to, and does the poll tell them that?
Let me go ahead and try that. I think the answer is no. This is this meeting, and it was no. So for instance, the poll that I just launched during this testing, it did not tell you whether it was anonymous or not. Did it, Oscar? Do you remember? Let me go ahead.
It was anonymous.
Well, the question is not anonymous. The question I did not make it anonymous, but the polling did not tell you that that was the case. So the answer is no. It does not tell students whether it's anonymous or not, because this is the poll, and that's what I was going to show you next. If you go into your own sessions, let me just go ahead and hit on previews, and then I'm going to go ahead and click here. If you go into the meeting or the class that you want to create a poll for, you simply go into, you do not edit the meeting, you simply go into the meeting place where you find the invitation and everything. And if you scroll down at the bottom, you will see the option poll. And here you will be able to see all of the options that you can, that you have for a poll. You can add the poll, and if you hit add, it will basically give you the window that I showed you a moment ago. And this is essentially the poll that I launched in here, and both of them are anonymous. That means that you can create these polls ahead of time. So if you create a meeting and you want to ask your students a question, you can always create the meeting, schedule it, and then go into the poll and then simply hit add. And then you can do this ahead of time, meaning you do not have to do it during the session, during the meeting. You can do this ahead of time. But now I want to show you what this looks like in terms of the report. So if I go right here and I am on my account and I'm going to go into the reports, and then I'm going to go into the meetings. Okay, and this is something that every user will be able to do. If you go into the reports tab and then you hit on meetings, this will give me the space where I'm going to be able to generate different types of reports for my meetings. But in particular, I'm looking for the poll reports. I'm going to choose this. Okay, what's important to note here is that every report will be available for a month only. So if you're looking at a report that you did on a poll over a month ago, you will not be able to find that. You will only be able to find the reports that happened in the last month only. So that's something important to know. So in this case, if you did have a poll, you can go ahead and click on, let's say this is the meeting that I'm looking for. I'm going to go ahead and hit and generate. I'm going to hit on all registrants and I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. I believe there's a poll here. So if that is the case, it will simply give me the ability to download, and this will give me a spreadsheet with the answers of each person. And if it says, if the questions were anonymous, then it will simply say anonymous and the responses. And if the questions were attached to a name, it will give me the name of the user as it was on the meeting space, and then their answers. And however, I want to point out once again that if a user was named as iPhone, because the user did not know how to rename themselves, then you will see that name in that report. So it's a little tricky and a little tedious also to get into it. But again, you have this available if you go to reports and you go to meeting, and you go into the specific type of report that you want to get into. Questions?
Yes, I
Yes.
have a question.
Yeah.
Going back to breakout rooms, um, when they're in their breakout rooms, are they able to see like the whiteboard, for example?
If someone is sharing their screen, they will be able to, they will not be able to see, once someone is on the breakout room, you as the host will not be able to share anything with them whatsoever. However, and I mean that by the share button, right? As I click right here, you're able to see my screen right now, right?
Right.
The pop, okay. So if you hit on share a screen right now, obviously everyone that's in the main room, I will be able to do this and I will be able
Right.
to choose the white room or not. But if you send people to the breakout rooms, if you click here, they're not going to see any of this. You're not going to be able to share any of that. They, however, can share amongst one another if you allow them to. So they themselves can click on the white room, on the share button, and they can share either their entire desktop or the whiteboard if they want to, but it's them. It's not
But
like
how
you can connect via if they are in the breakout room.
but how do you give them the materials they have to work on?
What I would recommend is just explain to them what the activity is and what exactly it is that they're going to be doing, and then use the chat feature so that you can give them all the materials that you want to go over, that you want them to discuss, whether
Because
it's a
I'm
link or
talking
Blackboard or yeah.
I'm talking about like an 8-page um, handout. It's like a prep test. Okay.
Mhm.
How would I get that material to them? Because I want them to work on it with other people.
I would suggest just look at the chat feature and then use the choose file option. But for that, you don't necessarily have to wait until they are in the breakout room to give them that material. When you are in the main room with everyone, you can provide that material and you can tell them for the next 15 minutes, you're going to go over this particular document that has 27 questions. And I'm going to put that document in the chat room. And you can use, as you can see in the chat in my screen, you can choose the file button and you can give them any document that you want. And you can give it to them in the chat room have them download the document, and once they are ready and with the document on their screen, then you send them to the breakout room.
Okay, so just regular old chat, just like
Just
chat back and forth with your
correct.
students.
Yep, regular chat, or
And
if
there's
you
a feature somewhere on chat that I'll be able to add something because I don't see it here.
the regular chat, if you
Is file
correct,
where I
correct.
would add it?
Yes. So if you are able to, if you go into your account settings and you enable the file sharing during the chat, you will be able to do
I'm
that.
sorry, I didn't hear you.
If you go to your account settings, as I did at the beginning of our session, and you check the option for file sharing in the chat, you will be able to see the option that I see on the lower right hand side of my screen. In addition to, let's say that you're not looking for a document, but let's say that you're looking for a link, you can also share links on the chat, or you can always tell people to go to Blackboard or whatever system that you're using. I always explain what the activity will be before I send them to the breakout room.
Right, but where do I upload this file? Because you broke up. I didn't hear the last 5 minutes of what you said.
So once again,
On
if
chat,
you
where do I
can
upload the file?
you can put it on the chat feature on the lower right hand side corner of my screen. You can see the file. You have the option to do
File,
that.
okay.
Now, if you do not want to
Okay.
share a document, you can also choose to share a document via a Blackboard course. If you're using Blackboard, you can share a document, or you can share a link, let's say to a website that you want them to look at. Any material that you want to give to your students, I would recommend you give it to them before you send them to the breakout room, so that by the
No, of
time
course,
they
of
go,
course.
that way they will have all of that material. Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. The next thing that I wanted to show you on the client is I have the client right here. Oscar, you're able to see the screen with the client, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you see the client on my screen, this is something that you can download, and you are able to, if you're able to download this on your device, you can do that whether you are on a Windows or a Mac. Right now, I am working on a Mac computer. If you have a Windows computer, it will be the same. You will see your picture on the top right-hand side corner, the top right. If you click on it, you will be able to go down to the check for updates. That's what I mentioned earlier in the session. If you want to make sure that you update your client regularly. So you simply click on it, and if you do, the system will give you the update that you need. If you need to update your client, in my case, I have updated it already, so I will be able to be so I already have the latest version. The next thing that, yes.
Oh, yeah. Is there a way of getting the attendance through reports, the attendance of the students at the meetings?
Oh, yes. Let me share that very quickly. That's going to be, thank you for reminding me. That's going to be on the same area for reports. Before, this is on my account on the browser. Before, I went to reports and then I clicked on meetings. But this time I'm going to go into usage. Okay. When I go into usage, once again, you also have to be cognizant that these reports are going to be available for 30 days, for a month only. So if you're looking for a report that was over a month ago, you're not going to be able to find that. So in this case, Zoom is going to give me all of that information for the previous month. And for every item, every meeting, I'm going to be giving all of this information. All of this right here is going to be the duration of the entire meeting. In this case, this meeting was 80 minutes, and then the number of people who were present. Now, if right here I go ahead and click on it, I will be able to see the number of the names of the people and the number of minutes that they were in the session. I mentioned before, when someone asked this question of attendance, that you can use this for attendance, but it's tricky. Why is it tricky? Because if the user did not log in with a name, you're simply going to see like iPhone or the string of numbers, phone numbers. So, and Zoom will tell you this number was present for 79 minutes, but you're not going to know who that person was. Also, if a person had problems with Wi-Fi or internet connection and had to log in again and join the session, you might want to see that, you probably will see that person multiple times. So you're going to have to click on show unique users so that you are able to filter those by unique users, and Zoom will tell you how many people were in there. So although you can use this for attendance, you necessarily you might want to look at it carefully, because there may not be completely clear if someone did not rename themselves, let's say, and they were present, and the name is iPhone and you don't know who that person is. So you can access that, but you might want to be cognizant of those drawbacks. Again, this is on the browser. You go into reports and you go into usage. You probably will see a lot of different items on your screen. You can go into the toggle columns and you can turn off the items that you don't want to see, and you can filter. Let's say that I just want this right here, and then this right here. So I just shrink my column and filter it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Let me go back to this. And I think I was showing the settings, and then with that, we will wrap it up. In the settings, this is important to mention, whether you work on a Windows or on a Mac, you will be able to see the settings icon. And in the settings, there's many different options, but I will only go over two. One of them is going to be a recording. I mentioned at the beginning of our session that local recording is recommended over cloud recording. And then if you hit on recording, you will be able to see the default folder where Zoom saves all of this information. If you download the client and you do not do anything to it, Zoom will create a default Zoom folder in your documents drive. So that's how you access the local recordings. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is background filters. So as I mentioned, the school put together a number of different images that you can use as virtual background. As you can see, it's easy enough to go ahead and add an image here. And this is very similar to adding an image as if you were to do in an email. And then you can always toggle and you can have them all ready whenever you want to switch on your account.
I did that already yesterday. Really good. I practiced.
That's great. That's great. I think this is all we wanted to share. We're going to end with a couple of reminders and helpful recommendations. As we wrap this up, we looked at the breakout rooms and the polling. It's always recommended that you use the breakout rooms as best as you can to allow for a small group work in your classes. Again, the polling feature is recommended for any kind of icebreaker activity or where you want to assess your students' understanding on something. I don't recommend it for quizzes at all. And then finally, some recommendations, always starting your meetings with the camera off, and then you can manually turn that on. I think it's always important to recommend to use that. If the students turn their cameras on, the virtual background, it's a good option if they choose to turn their cameras on. If you're using your personal meeting room for office hours, make sure that you enable the waiting room so that you can see who's trying to come into your room space. And then consider asking your students using any kind of personal notebook, physical notebook, or any kind of physical paper to take notes. I'm sure that you already do, but it's helpful to remind ourselves about it. My students, I always recommend that they have a notebook so that they can take notes. And then finally, update your desktop client and mobile apps regularly, because whether it's a security issue or a new feature, as I mentioned, Zoom is always going to push those updates on a regular basis. So that's about it. Oscar, are there any final questions?
Did you go over the usage and account settings?
Sure. Let me go ahead. Oops. If you go into do you see the Zoom account now?
Yes.
Okay, so if you go in the Zoom account and you are on your profile and you go into settings, This is the area where I was talking about enabling the breakout room. For instance, you can do Control F. This is what I was talking about. Make sure that the breakout room is on. The same with the polling feature is on as well. And the virtual background as well, you would have to turn it on. I believe these options are off by default. Don't quote me on that. I believe that is the case. I turned it, these settings I have tweaked already many times. So just go into your settings and make sure that you check these options so that you can see whether the options are on or off. Once you turn this on, every time you yourself run a meeting from your account, you will be able to see them at the bottom of your screen as you saw them at the bottom of my screen earlier. All right. Any more questions? We're good?
We're good.
Okay, so I want to thank once again everyone for your time, for your participation. I hope that the session was helpful in any way. Thank you to Oscar for his help on the moderation, and there will be additional sessions happening next week on Thursday and Friday, level 1 and level 2 again. The links are on the Google Doc that we shared earlier. I recommend that you sign up if you haven't already. And thank you once again. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a nice weekend. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, Pablo.
Bye,
Thank
you
very
too.
much.
Bye.
Yes.
Thank you.
Pablo,
Someone
thank
had a
you.
question? I can hear. Yes,
Yep.
I can still hear you.
Yeah, Pablo. Thank you very much. I sent you a private message.
Okay. Thank you. I will look at that and get back to you.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
no problem.
Okay. Bye bye.
Thanks, y'all.